the Paladin, paragon of virtue, pillar of morality,
lawful stupid,
defender of the faith, the weak, and the downtrodden.
not fun at all to play.
Sounds like we need to talk Paladins this week on the Dungeon Masters Dojo.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Dungeon Masters Dojo podcast. This is a show for game masters, as well as experienced and new players alike. We hope to bring you the tools needed to not only be a great GM, but to help you develop as a player. I'm your host, Louis Aponte. Our stars of the show are Scott Labby and Bill Robotile. Let's enter the dojo and see what both Bill and Scott have in store for us today. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. Just got done polishing my armor.
I just got done riding my warhorse here.
I guess we're talking about Paladins and how fun they are to play.
Yes, now they are kind of fun.
We have a before and after.
Yeah,
very much.
Before they were called Paladinks.
Paladins.
Paladins.
Yes, it was a rough road, the Paladinic road.
I played a lot of Paladins in the early days because no one else would.
I did too. I kind of liked the idea of Paladins. I liked what they stood for, but they were not easy.
They were difficult.
They were my style.
Very, very difficult to play. Well,
Yeah.
that goes without saying.
Lou playing a Paladin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, that's kind of like
5 minutes in, he suicides.
I would have been stripped of my powers.
day one. They may not have made it through character creation before they were taken away. That was the wrong actor for the wrong role. Yeah,
And the wrong script.
It happens.
it does. Paladins were hard. Before we get into the meat of the Paladins, let's do some plugs. There were some folks that were kind of really, really gracious enough to mention us, so I wanted to say thank you to them.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, big thank you to the folks over at 307 RPG who gave us a plug on the Bite Size Gaming podcast. So go check those guys out. You can find them at 307rpg.com. And I listen to the Bite Size Gaming podcast over on Spotify. You can find them there too. So thank you guys. We appreciate the plug.
Awesome. Twofer.
Yeah, it's always nice when, someone who's well established, kind of like the big kid on the block, lets you play basketball with them.
Gives you a stick of gum and says it's all right.
Yeah.
Even if we were the last ones picked.
That's right. It lifts you up so you can get the ball in the basket.
We are the little guy.
So let's talk Paladins. Paladins have a 45? No, even more than that year history with Dungeons and Dragons.
Yep. Yeah, about 45, 46.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this information is from all from published material. That's where we found this. There's no unearthed arcana in this episode. We know there's some oaths out there that are being play tested for the Paladin in the UA. They're not listed in this episode, though. We may or may not review them in the future, just so that you're aware. So let's talk. Here's some basic information regarding the Paladins from first all the way to third edition. They were required to be lawful good alignment, which can be very challenging to play if your entire party is not of lawful good alignment. Even if they are of lawful good alignment, it could still be a little tricky because the Paladin is almost always going to be, more lawful good than the rest of the party.
Oh, the rest of them might be lawful, but the good part is the tricky part for them. If you deviate from your alignment, you get stripped of all your power. And that really sucks.
Sure does.
That, of course, has changed, but back in the old days, not many people enjoyed playing Paladins for just that reason. Paladins could detect evil. They're immune to fear and disease, could cure disease, and had a special mount. And their spellcasting abilities were tied to the cleric's abilities, but weren't nearly as potent.
They weren't. They also had a very strict moral code, so they must be lawful good alignment. They could not willfully commit an evil act. They could not associate with any characters who committed evil acts, which was tough if you were playing with Lou. Had to be truthful at all times and couldn't lie. Had to warn their enemies. And couldn't engage in stealth or subterfuge or use missile weapons or poison. So minor deviations were sometimes permissible, depending, of course, on your dungeon master. But any violation of these codes could result in you being stripped of all your paladin abilities. So you effectively become a crappy fighter after that. Yeah,
you go from really cool to crap fighter.
Yeah, just suck. You better open up a tavern or start a farm at that point in time.
One of the other things that was in the early editions was that you could not multi-class on a consistent basis. So it means you couldn't split your levels between paladin or any other class like you can now. Which made it really difficult because other people would be multi-classing, dip into another pool of resources, and you're still that one guy doing your one thing and hoping you don't step off the path just ever so slightly.
And one of the things, if you've ever played with a Sinister DM, and I have played with a few.
Yeah, I'm sitting right here.
And we know. That guy, not to mention any names, was always looking for that one thing to slip you up, right? So when the succubus shows up, she's coming for the paladin.
Oh yeah,
yeah, not the rogue.
No,
that's no fun. No, Lou was always safe. So we first see the paladin in the original Greyhawk supplement back in 1975, some 45 years ago.
Yeah.
So this was a subclass of the fighting man, which eventually became the fighter. The Paladin was heavily influenced by the chivalric Christian knights of the Middle Ages, as well as some literary figures, perhaps most notably Holger Karlsson from the Poul Anderson novel, 3 Hearts and 3 Lions, as well, of course, the Arthurian Knights. I vaguely remember the character and the novel, but that was probably some 40 years ago, maybe slightly less that I read it, so don't ask me. I don't remember it.
I know for a fact you have trouble remembering things from last week.
Yeah. Am I wearing pants? Yep.
Yeah. God, we hope so.
Bingo. Nailed it.
Advanced Dungeons & Dragons First Edition comes around not long after the Paladin, and now one of the standard character classes that's available in the Player's Handbook. In this edition, the Paladin class had a high ability score prerequisites, so you didn't see many Paladins back then. In addition, only human characters could be Paladins. Now what is weird is that we get some Dragon magazine articles later that discuss paladins of other races as well as other cultures. So you had a little playability there, but it was more of a kind of suggestion. Hey, get a load. You might be able to do this, but it wasn't in the standard books.
Yeah, it never seemed to make it into canon until much later.
Much later, yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense. I always wondered, well, why wouldn't an elf have the ability to be a paladin, or even a dwarf? Or
I think half-elf was the first one that could delve into that pool.
I think you're right, yeah.
Half-elf was the first one I can get into it.
So the paladin was heavily influenced by Western European chivalric code of knights, and even the imagery in the Player's Handbook was reflective of that. I always go back to that full-page black and white spread of a paladin in hell. He's standing on this hill, and there's all these demons kind of besetting him. And
the Robin Cook did an absolutely gorgeous piece back in 1990-91, painting that was used in one of the books later on. And it was a female paladin on the stairs heading for the temple with someone in the temple door ready to slam it shut, waving her on. And you can see these claws and stuff at her heels. And, it was a female paladin, which, a lot of people didn't play back then either. But it was an absolute beautiful piece of work. But it was just that Arthurian look to it. The high shoulders and the plate armor, and so all the imagery back then was very stereotypical knight-like.
Yeah, Western European male type. Actually, and this is not to deviate, but this is a whole episode unto itself. But I don't really think we saw a lot of female characters in D&D artwork until much later, when Larry Elmore, the other artist escapes me, began to contribute their work to the D&D books.
Mm-hmm.
I was always a big Larry Elmore fan.
In 1985, Unearthed Arcana hits the bookstores, and the Paladin goes from a fighter subclass to a cavalier subclass, trading back and forth, or the beginning of trading back and forth in the subclass world right now. So
it's a big custody battle.
Yes.
Who gets the Paladin?
Who gets the Paladin?
Fighter or cavalier?
When Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition came around, the Paladin goes back to being a subclass of the fighter. Later, it was reintroduced as a kit in the Complete Fighter's Handbook in 1989, and in 1994, the Paladins become official and get their own handbook called the Complete Paladin's Handbook.
Now, in 3rd edition, those specific ability score requirements are no longer present. They're not a prime requisite, but there's a suggestion that strength, constitution, charisma, and wisdom should be high.
It's nice that those prereqs dropped because it was very difficult. Another thing that held it back, why you didn't see a lot, you had 4 stats you needed a high. With the charisma 17, all the others being, I believe, a 15.
Yeah.
You don't often get to roll those kind of high stats, and when you do, you usually pick the wizard because that's the only way you can make your wizard survive.
Yeah, and back in the early days, you were rolling dice. They didn't have all these other options for you to build a character.
Right. Yep.
So
Yep.
you think of how many times you roll up characters, and I mean it's foolish, but just to get a paladin, I remember like rolling up probably like 20 or 30 characters before I hit that magic.
Yeah.
Stat group, and there we go.
You were creating farmers at the time.
I was lots of very sturdy farmers. So look out, because here comes 4th edition. Yeah. 4th edition's one of those things that causes rifts in our community.
Yep.
Formerly, paladins were just righteous warriors. They weren't tied to any specific deity, but now 4th edition comes along, and paladins are tied to a chosen deity, which I think is a really good idea.
I always liked it.
Yeah, it made a lot of sense. Their powers, such as spells and lay on hands, come directly from the divine power of whoever their chosen deity is. Now, paladins can have an alignment differing from lawful good, which was the alignment that they were hemmed into in previous editions. This alignment, of course, was corresponding to their deity of choice's alignment.
Cool. In 4th edition, being a paladin was permanent. Previous editions, if there was a slip-up or a deviation from lawful good, the paladin would lose all their powers that made him a paladin and end up just a fighter. Now in a 4th edition, that is no longer a concern. What makes this a really good thing is that it makes the paladin a lot easier to play in-game with a variety of other characters because it's not constantly having to police the other characters. If you ever tried playing a paladin in any previous editions, it was very difficult to do so because of this very reason.
It was hard.
It was difficult. Every paladin lost their powers and they had to go on some kind of quest to get them back, or once again back to the crappy fighter thing with, maybe your magic sword would still work if you had one, but now it's not an issue.
Well, and it also forces the other players to go on that atonement quest with the paladin, even if they didn't want to.
Yep.
And if there was any alignment problems with those characters, he may still lose out.
Yep. Yeah.
Yep.
It was complicated, and it kind of stripped the fun out of playing a paladin in a diverse group, right? Because you want a rogue with you.
Oh, everyone's having fun. You have to work.
Yeah. It was like punching a clock. It was like your job, and you were kind of a pain in the ass sometimes, and that's no fun. That's no fun for the other players. It's no fun for you, and your character wasn't really liked because you're that stick in the mud.
Right. Okay. The smite evil power is now replaced with simply smite. That makes things a little bit easier there.
We also see different build options, one based on strength, one based on charisma. 5th edition rolls along, and here we are back in the present. The paladins are not entirely different from their 4th edition counterparts, but now we see different paths that a paladin can commit themselves to, and these, of course, are the oaths. And that's where 5th edition comes along. I really, really think we start to see paladins being fun to play, finally.
Right.
After almost a half a century, finally paladins are fun to play.
All of 40 years.
Well, with age comes wisdom.
It certainly does. And now they could be of any alignment. It's mentioned that evil paladins are rare, but it's not unheard of. So that opens up a lot of really fun role play and story opportunities.
Yes.
A lot the anti-paladin, which we'll talk about later, but now you really get into it.
All right, so I'm going to throw a little history at you, just a touch. All right. In medieval Europe, the legends are paladins were 12 brave knights who were loyal followers of Charlemagne, the king of the Franks and founder of the Holy Roman Empire. The name paladin, from a word meaning the person attached to a court, implies that the knights may have been residing in the royal palace. The paladins appear primarily in a series of legends surrounding Charlemagne, his adventures, and the history of the Frankish kingdom. Many were said to play important roles in the Crusades and battles against the Muslims. Among the most famous works in which some of the Paladins appear are the Chanson de Roland. I know I pronounced that wrong, so I apologize. It's Song of Roland, a French poem written in circa 1000. The number of Paladins also appear in Italian legends, though under slightly different names. You can say they're a permanent resident of the medieval times, and this relates to the Middle Ages in Europe from a period of about 500 to 1500 AD. In ancient history, Paladins were renowned not just as elite warriors, but as champions of the weak and vulnerable, epitomizing all that was good. They were devoted to kindness, but beyond measures, they were devoted in their effectiveness at ridding the world of evil and crusading in the name of good, justice, and order. All the while, they adhered to their strict code of honor. It was said that in combat, a paladin with a cause was almost impossible to defeat. Such was their fearsome reputation, and it said that they had divine powers. However, it's not necessary to be a knight to be regarded as a paladin. Indeed, over the centuries, the term paladin has found its way into dictionaries as a noun used to describe generally a determined advocate and defender of a particular cause. Such is the reputation of paladins through history that Dungeons & Dragons and various other role-playing games have adopted paladins amongst their cast. Needless to say, in every game they're regarded as amongst the most agile and effective of all warriors. As the Paladin Promise illustrates, we could not have conceived a more fitting name for our business. It synonymizes what we do and how we do it. We strive to honor the paladins who have come before us and entrusted with a cause we are indeed almost impossible to defeat. So, a little real-world history on paladins.
And that's this week's episode of Nova on PBS.
Well, Bill is older, so he would have all those notes.
I happen to like Nova.
I do too. For all you youngins out there, go look it up.
That's right. Little known fact is that Bill actually graduated with Charlemagne.
He was actually in the yearbook was Luke's laughing. In the yearbook, he was actually listed as the class clown. So yeah.
That's Charlemagne.
Yep.
Him and Roland.
Yeah. Oh, look, I'm going to cut off another head.
Well, with that, I think we should take a little break right here for a moment. I need to catch my breath.
And we're back. We just got done changing the tennis balls on the bottom of Bill's walker, so it's not going to.
They're orange.
Yeah, it's not going to squeak anymore.
I can see them so much easier.
So let's talk about paladins in pop culture, right? I'm sure paladins have popped up in books, TVs, movies, maybe.
All over the place. A couple of my favorite, references. Have guns, will travel. Richard Boone. Westerns. Your lead character in a lot of Westerns are your paladins. Another one that stands out, Clayton Moore, the Lone Ranger.
One of my favorites. Yeah.
There is a paladin. I mean, he's even in white.
Yep. And shame on them for making that god-awful movie and Johnny Depp as Tonto. You couldn't find a Native American to play Tonto and do that role justice. You had to find Johnny Depp, who was basically Captain Jack Sparrow with a crow on his head.
Well, I think they just used him for his name to try to draw people in.
He's got a great agent. That's all I got to say.
Yeah.
Because he should not have been in that role.
Yeah. Chief Jay Silverheels is rolling over in his grave, I'm sure, after all that. But don't get me started on that. But yes, the Lone Ranger, probably one of the best examples.
Now, I may be dating myself. I'm going back quite a ways. But when I think of paladins, I think of Westerns. And, your lead character is most oftenly that paladin role. They're trying to do the good thing, and no, I'm not going to drink, and no, I'm not going to go upstairs to the above the bar where the ladies are entertaining, and I'm going to make sure I take care of the young kid that was slapped by the wayward sheriff, and that's what I got.
Yeah, those clearly weren't Clint Eastwood Westerns. Darth Vader.
Ooh.
Yeah,
good choice.
I see Darth Vader as the Oathbreaker Paladin. He started off perhaps lawful good, lawful neutral good maybe, but began sliding over to the dark side, so to speak, ending up as a lawful evil Paladin. I guess he could probably be an Oath of Conquest or perhaps even an Oath of Retribution Paladin as well.
Yeah. I think Oathbreaker fits better, but yeah, I could see him as those.
Yeah, and you could kind of understand how he kind of turned. He sees the Jedi Order as those folks that kind of kept him from his loved ones, his mother, Padme, and all that. I like that one. I didn't care for the movies, but
it stuck out enough that you remembered it.
It did because of the first three, the good Star Wars movies. Probably, I think one of the best examples of a lawful good paladin is Captain America. He's even got like his special weapon, his shield, and he's not like obnoxious.
No, he's just that goody two shoes.
Yeah,
he doesn't even swear.
Does not even swear, and he will straighten you out if you're cussing on a mission. If you're an Avenger,
Didn't he do that in one of the?
yes,
episodes?
he did.
Yes, he
Tony
did.
Stark, that foul-mouthed, wealthy boy.
Well, that takes me to, I was going to say Iron Man is my paladin.
Iron Man, definitely not a lawful good paladin.
No,
What
not
about
a lawful
what
good.
about the Dark Knight?
Yeah, and we're gonna. There is actually an oath where those paladins are nicknamed Dark Knights, and I can see Batman very easily being a paladin, like an oath of vengeance. I think is what he would be.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. And I don't know, for all you Dresden Files fans out there, especially our good friend Korik.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Michael Carpenter from the Dresden Files. He's a Knight of the Cross and very much so a kind of like the Christian ideal of a paladin from like the old days of D&D. And he kind of sounds to me like he could be an Oath of Devotion paladin. He's kind of like that voice of morality for Harry Dresden and kind of like the voice of Christianity.
I got another one to throw into the Oath of Vengeance column.
All right.
Van Helsing.
Van Helsing. Yeah. I get
Out of
Van
literature.
Helsing.
Yep.
Yep. Even in some of those movies.
He's actually going out killing monsters. He's carrying the cross. He's invoking the name of the church. And aside from his attire, which is usually ratty as hell, I can see him as a paladin.
Most definitely. Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. So when we play and we make characters, we kind of make characters just based on really what our idea of a character is.
Right.
But what do you think are the best races? Let's talk the best races for paladins, Bill.
All right.
Yeah, you can find paladins on page 82 of the Player's Handbook.
The Player's Handbook identifies strength as being your highest score, followed by charisma. Strength, of course, is what you're going to use in melee combat, and charisma is your spellcasting ability. Wisdom would be a close third, the ability to stat out higher because your saving throws are tied to that ability.
Let's look at some races that are very attractive options for building your paladin. Today we're looking at variant humans, dragonborn, half-elves, Aasimar, and Tritons.
If you're building a strength-based paladin, you go with the dexterity-based paladin as well if you want. But if strength is the way you're going, the dragonborn are a great choice. You're going to get that stat bump on strength and charisma, which is fantastic for melee. And the charisma bump is going to help you with your spellcasting. In addition, you get resistance to one element of choice and an innate breath weapon. Not that a breath weapon makes you a particularly effective paladin, but it's pretty cool and adds flavor over character itself. The Dragonborn can be found on page 32 of the Player's Handbook.
They really are a good choice for a strength-based paladin.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
They're beefy, just in their backgrounds and everything. So you get your bonuses, and if you have a decent roll or how you select your points, depending on how you build your character, you could end up with a pretty good tank out in the front.
Very effective. Variant humans work well for paladins as well, and pretty much every other class for that matter. It's about time that 5th edition has made humans a more attractive option for player races. With variant humans, you get an ability score increase for any 2 abilities of your choice. You get an extra skill of your choice, and you get to select a feat, which can really bump up your paladin game, especially at first level. Humans work pretty well without the variant human option. You get that ability score bump in each of your abilities, but no feat. Variant humans, they just seem to work better. Humans can be found on page 29 of the Player's Handbook.
Half-elves are a pretty good choice as well. Both the half-elves and variant humans can support either a dexterity or a strength build, so they're very highly customizable. With the half-elf, you get a charisma score increase, and you get to choose another stat bump. So you can go to strength, wisdom, you can put that in dexterity as well. Another feature that is nice is you get proficiency in 2 skills of your choice, which come in handy later. Half-elves can be found on page 38 of the Player's Handbook.
Yeah, half-elves got some pretty good attention in 5th edition,
They
I
did.
think.
They finally kind of made them up, built them up so, because they seem to be like the not quite so good cousin of humans.
Yeah, they were like the redheaded stepchild.
Yeah, yeah, very much.
They weren't as cool as elves, or weren't as hardy as humans. Now they got some really good attention, so they're very attractive for a player race. Aasimar are pretty good choices as well, statistically and thematically. As they're celestial beings born to serve as champions of the gods, and nothing really cries out Paladin more than that. They get a charisma stat bump of 2, which is going to help with the spell casting. Resistance to necrotic and radiant damage, which is going to come in handy if you're fighting undead. Healing hands, which complements your lay on hands ability nicely. And they know the light cantrip, which just works very nicely thematically for your Aasimar Paladin. I think the Aasimar subraces that work best for Paladin are the Protector, which gives you a bonus to your wisdom score, which is going to help with your saving throws, and the Fallen, which gives you a bonus to your strength. You can find Aasimar on page 104 of Volo's Guide to Monsters.
I would be using that light spell all the time to backlight myself.
Yeah, thematically it just looks great. You can see that Aasimar Paladin walking into the court of some noble or king, and he's aglow in radiant light.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. All right, I'm gonna throw you a curveball here. Tritons are another great choice for Paladin character, especially if you're playing an aquatic campaign. But it's not necessary that you do so in order to play a Triton Paladin. They're amphibious, which means they can breathe on land or in water. So while they may not be as comfortable out of water as they are in, you can certainly play them in your terrestrial campaign. Just come up with a really good backstory. Triton get the ability score increase to their strength and charisma scores, which is great for a Paladin as usual. They tend towards lawful good alignments, which is not necessary to play a Paladin anymore, but it does speak to the class quite a bit. You can find Tritons on page 115 of the Volo's Guide to Monsters.
Tritons, huh?
Tritons.
That's interesting.
You know me. I Iron Man my characters all the time. I will pull just random roll on a chart somewheres and go, all right, I'm going to use that.
I think a Triton Paladin would be so alien to the terrestrial world that it would be really, really fun to play, because they're lawful good, from a cultural standpoint, maybe different from another culture's, version of lawful good.
Would also make it interesting too, because what they think is a norm for lawful good for them may not necessarily be the same norm for lawful good of the terrestrial races.
Right. And I think that makes for very interesting gameplay.
I mean, granted, it's like, oh no, it's lawful good to kill your pal, and release their souls is the one that everyone's going to go to. It gives you a little wiggle room with the lawful good alignment through interpretation.
Yeah,
a little wiggle room. You don't want to get too carried away. So, Scott, let's talk about some oaths.
Yeah, let's do that. My favorite part of the 5th edition Paladin by far is the oaths.
The oaths make it that's what makes it the meaty fighter.
They have kind of officially become badass.
Yes, they have with the oaths.
That is cool. The Oath of Devotion. Let's talk about that. The Oath of Devotion can be found on page 85 of the Player's Handbook. These are the Paladins who appeal to the loftiest ideals of justice, virtue, and honor. Those who take this oath are lawful good, following the tenets of honesty, courage, compassion, honor, and duty. They are nicknamed Cavaliers, White Knights, or Holy Warriors. These are the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons.
The quintessential Paladin.
Yeah, the originals.
Yep. Oath of the Ancients. That's on page 86 of the Player's Handbook. The Oath of the Ancients is as old as the elves themselves. They are the Paladins that are referred to as the Green Knights, Horn Knights, or Fey Knights. They swear this oath to cast their lot with the side of light in the cosmic struggle against darkness, because they love the beautiful and life-giving things of the world, and not necessarily because they believe in the principles of honor, courage, and justice. They follow the tenets of the kindling of light, sheltering of the light, preserving their own light, and being of light.
I think these would be really fun to play, and kind of like a Fantastic Forest like campaign where they're teaming up with rangers and druids and, you know, maybe some sort of like shapeshifter or something. I just think it'd be like huge fun.
In the new Netflix series, The Cursed, they actually have one, the Green Knight, who's in the story right now.
Yeah, I'm actually following that.
It's pretty good.
I started binge watching it a couple days ago going, wow, how did I not see this?
It's a whole different take on the Arthurian Knights.
Yeah.
But the Green Knight is in there, and it will surprise you.
Yes.
Awesome. Yes. Awesome. I love the idea. Let's talk about the Oath of Vengeance. You can find the Oath of Vengeance on page 87 of the Player's Handbook. This oath is a solemn commitment to punishing those who have committed grievous sins. Their tenets are simple. Fight the greater evil, no mercy for the wicked, by any means necessary, and restitution. These are the ones that are nicknamed Avengers or Dark Knights. This is where Batman would fall into it.
That's what I think.
Well, some of the darker versions of Batman.
Yeah, and I
not the Saturday morning cartoon version.
I think you could run such an awesome like John Wick kind of game made up of all Oath of Vengeance paladins just going out to like kick some ass and take some names, and it would be huge fun.
I could see that.
You know, like
they're down there taking the organizations down.
Yeah, like even a city-based campaign with these kind of paladins. It'd be like the Magnificent Seven and John Wick had a baby. And it would just it sounds like it would be incredible fun.
Just don't call it the Magnificent Wick.
Right. I don't know that. It's got a ring to it though.
I don't think it's for this channel.
Okay, let's move on to the Oathbreaker. This is one I like this one. It's on page 97 of the Dungeon Master's Guide. This is technically a villainous class option intended to be used as a non-player character, but why can't you use it as a player character? This is all the makings for a PC and is ready to be played. The Oathbreaker is a paladin that has broken their sacred oath to pursue some darker ambition or serving evil power. Whatever light that burned in the soul of this paladin has now been extinguished. They are in effect the 5th edition version of the anti-paladin, but more on that later. The Oathbreaker paladin must be 3rd level to take on this new oath, and once they do, all the abilities of the old oath are replaced with the new one. There are no tenets listed with this oath as with other players because they're supposed to be intended as an NPC, but perhaps it's because they simply have gone dark, and for lack of a better term, that's their tenet. They've gone dark. But I would love to play this character.
Yeah.
I would love to play this character.
Awesome villain. Like a Lich's bodyguard or something.
Yeah. That would be that'd be pretty cool. There's an option for this atonement with this oath, which is pretty cool. Your paladin can return back to the light side, a la Darth Vader in Return of the Jedi. So you have a chance of digging yourself out of the hole if you find it doesn't work for you in the game, or your game master is going, all right, stop killing everybody.
Makes for a good story.
And it makes a good story. So you can let the rest of the characters drag you back to the side of light.
I really dig the Oathbreaker too.
The Oathbreaker is a cool class.
Oath of Conquest. You can find this on page 37 of Xanathar's Guide to Everything. These are the paladins that seek glory in battle and subjugation of their enemies. Since to these paladins it isn't enough just to establish order, they must also vigorously, mind you, crush the forces of chaos and evil. They toe the line between hero and villain in their never-ending quest to squash evil. Their tenets are douse the flames of hope, rule with an iron fist, and strength above all.
Douse the flames of hope. I just love the sound of that.
Yeah.
This is Conan.
Yeah.
This is Conan.
Yeah. Crush the enemy, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentations of the vimins.
He practices that in the mirror. He did that way too well.
Every morning.
I knew it.
Shirtless.
That was a picture we did not need painted.
You all can thank us for this being a radio broadcast. As
opposed to a YouTube video.
As opposed to a YouTube video.
There'd be a lot of black bars on that YouTube video.
The whole screen would be blacked out.
Just from the neck up. Yep.
Wow. Okay.
And that's why we have an explicit warning, folks.
Okay, let's move on to the Oath of Redemption. This is page 38 of Xanathar's Guide to Everything. These paladins believe that violence is only a last resort and that any person can be redeemed. The path of benevolence and justice is one that anyone can walk. When they face evil, they do so in the hope of turning that evil to light, slaying their enemies only when doing so to save their others' lives. These paladins are not fools, though. They know that such wicked enemies, such as devils and demons, cannot be turned to the light, and such they receive the full wrath of the paladin's prowess. Their tenets are peace, innocence, patience, and wisdom.
This is kind of like the social work branch of Paladin Order, from the sounds of it.
Yeah.
Let's go in and talk first. Let's see. Let's see what the problem is.
You look angry. Let's sit down and discuss
maybe we
this.
could get you into some counseling, anger management.
Would you like a warm beverage?
Yeah, some support systems. It doesn't have to be like this.
Talk out your feelings. Talk out your feelings. I'm here for you.
Yeah.
I'm listening.
Use the when you, I feel, and we'll start to make some progress.
There you go. I feel better already. We just went through 6 of the 12 steps right there.
Yeah.
Quick.
Oath of the Crown, page 32 of the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. This oath is identified as for those individuals that are playing in the Forgotten Realms setting, but you're the DM, so you can certainly add this oath into your particular campaign. It's your campaign, right?
Absolutely.
We did it.
We add all kinds of stuff in.
That's right. Paladins who follow this path are sworn to the ideals of civilization, serving society, and the just laws that hold the society together. Their tenets are usually set by the sovereign they serve, but generally include law, loyalty, courage, and responsibility. They're like the cops.
They're the cops.
Yeah.
Yep. They're the constabulary.
So these oaths, I think, are really what takes the Paladin in 5th edition to that next level of awesomeness. We kind of laid down the foundation in 4th edition, and 5th, it seems like they tweaked it a lot.
They definitely gave a lot of attention to the class, and I'm glad they did, because before it was a struggle to play them, and then it was confusing because you didn't know. Like I said, they were being passed from. They're like the foster kids. They're being passed from household to household. You never know where they're going to end up next. And then finally, they found a home in 4th, but still were a little wonky. I want to play a Paladin. Because these are fun to play now, because you have so much versatility out of them now where you didn't have that before.
And you don't always have to be that, that white hat. You could kind of be a little edgy.
Oh yeah.
Which is cool. And there's a lot more playability, a lot more opportunities for individuality. I kind of feel like Paladins in previous editions were almost like cookie cutters of one another.
Yeah, well, you had such strict prerequisites and alignment, and they were forced into a cookie cutter position.
Yeah, like if your Paladin died, you could just change the name on the character sheet and
put a new crest on his breastplate, and boom,
and there you go, brand new guy.
Yep,
same bad haircut.
You didn't even have to go with the twin
brand
brother bit. It's just from the same order.
Yep, here he is, same boring ass Paladin.
I'm not Ted. I'm John.
Let's get into some backgrounds. There's got to be some good backgrounds you could pick for your Paladin.
Well, the Paladin quick build in the player's handbook suggests that you pick the noble background, which certainly is an acceptable background and one that strongly consider for your Paladin. But it's not the only one that you can add depth with to your Paladin. With the noble background, you get history and persuasion as your skills and a set of nice clothes and a signet ring, which rounds out the noble bearing of the Paladin quite nicely. You also get one language of your choice. So, but that's a little. I think that's always been a little pedestrian. So
yeah, it's kind of too easy.
It's a cop out.
Yeah.
What else we got?
How about the Acolyte? I think that works well for a Paladin. Having spent your life in the service of the temple to a specific god or pantheon of gods really makes for a solid background for your Paladin. In addition, you get 2 extra languages of your choice, and you get insight and religion as additional skills. These are skills that are normally an option for the Paladin class anyway, so make sure you pick your background before you select your skills, so you're not doing a lot of erasing.
There you go. Another fun one is Folk Hero. It's a nice option for your background as well. Your Paladin character can have humble beginnings, made their name through performing heroic deeds for the local levels. Animal handling skill will come in handy when you're astride your horse. The survival skill will add flavor to your character for those campaigns where you're overland travel. And it can't hurt to be able to snare a rabbit and build a shelter, because you're not always going to have a retinue with you making your meals and setting up your tent or your pavilion for you. So you got to go out there and rough and tough it, especially with the Folk Hero.
I kind of like this one the best out of all those other options. I think this one is the neatest.
It is. It is. And it's more believable, and it's a good storyline, too, that's been used a number of times.
Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
Yeah, in A New Hope. He was kind of like, by the end of the movie, he was kind of like a folk hero. Started from humble beginnings, did some pretty impressive things. Learned how to be a knight from an old knight,
an old dude.
Yep. Got himself a medal.
Mm-hmm.
Still upset they screwed Chewbacca.
Yeah, that wasn't right.
Yeah, that's messed up.
He got relegated to the pet area.
Yeah, it's like, oh, and they rubbed his belly,
yeah,
and sent him on his way.
So we can add a little bit more flavor to this Paladin stew.
Yeah, let's add some salt and pepper.
Let's go with skills and feats,
or that,
or that. Paladins are able to pick 2 skills from athletic, insight, intimidation, medicine, persuasion, and religion. You also get some skills from whichever background you choose. So pick your background first, then go back and repick those so you're not double dipping. These are the general picks of feats for the Paladin character. These are not taken into consideration what fighting style your Paladin has or what race they happen to be. We'll get into that a little bit more.
A lot more. I'm looking forward to that part.
But there's a host of feats that would be great for Paladins. If you decide to go with the variant human build, you get this right from the get-go, and that helps a lot.
A lot. So let's talk about Alert. That's a good one. Grants you a +5 bonus to initiative, which is great if your dump stat happens to be dexterity, as it often is with Paladins. If you're getting wearing the heavy armor, you don't need to be dexterous, and even if you did have a high dexterity, it's not going to come into play with that kind of armor anyway.
This is true.
So as long as you're conscious, you can't be surprised, and other creatures don't gain advantage on attack rolls as a result of being hidden from you. That is pretty good.
And let's see, you're clunking around and you're announcing yourself. Stealth is not somewhere you're going to be going.
Out of the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like your toddler sitting on the kitchen floor banging the wooden Kool-Aid spoon up against the pan.
Ding, 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 and then whips the colander at you. Let's try Athlete as a natural for a Paladin. You get a stat bump to strength or dexterity. When you're prone, it takes 5 feet of movement to get up, not 10. Climbing doesn't cost you any extra movement. And you can make a running long jump or running high jump after moving only 5 feet rather than 10. And the movement of most PCs to execute this same maneuver.
Nice.
That could be handy. Not that they get knocked down a lot, but you're in armor.
Yeah. It helps to be able to get up quick if you get knocked down. So we can't imagine the Paladin charging into battle. If that's the case, why not take the Charger feat? When you use your action to dash, you can use a bonus action to make 1 melee weapon attack or to shove a creature. If you move at least 10 feet in a straight line immediately before taking this bonus action, you either gain a +5 bonus to the attack's damage roll if you choose to make a melee attack and hit, or push the target up to 10 feet away from you if you choose to shove instead. A lot like the shield feat.
Very similar. But you get the attack.
Yes. And I think you can stack them, or at least it doesn't say you can't.
It doesn't say you can't. And I think the two, we kind of looked at this before when we were talking off air here, and it looks like you can. And the two put together could be really formidable.
Yeah.
Really formidable.
Especially if you have like a, well, we're not talking other classes, so I'll save that one for later.
Okay, so let's Inspiring Leader is another clear choice for your Paladin. This is a charisma based, so it's right up the Paladin's alley. You can spend 10 minutes inspiring your companions, shoring up the resolve to fight. When you do so, 6 friendly creatures, which can include yourself, within 30 feet of you, you can see or hear, or who can understand you. Each creature can gain temporary hit points equal to your level plus your charisma modifier.
That's a nice one.
That's a nice one.
That's a nice one. And who better to be your party leader than your paladin?
Yeah. Up there on his horse, weapon raised above his head.
Being inspiring.
Yep.
Charismatic. Handsome.
All the things none of us are.
Yes. Sadly, there are no paladins at this table.
Well, Lou's, he's charismatic.
Don't forget it.
How can I? Mounted combatant is another great choice and just really works with the class. There's that iconic image of the knight astride their steed. You are a dangerous foe to face while mounted. When mounted and not incapacitated, you gain the following benefits. You have advantage on melee attack rolls against any unmounted creature that is smaller than your mount. You can force an attack targeted at your mount to you instead. And if your mount is subjected to an effect that allows it to make dexterity saving throw to take only half damage, it instead takes no damage if it succeeds in the saving throw and only half damage if it fails. Not bad.
That's
That's
great horsemanship.
That's some William Shatner level horse handling.
It was only a matter of time before he went there.
Yeah. I'm cutting that part out.
The editor's rough.
No Star Trek talk on this channel.
We're going to talk about this off air.
And we're going to move on to what we've mentioned earlier, the Shield Master. This is the last of our choices for Paladin. This is a great option for a sword and board Paladin. You can use your shields not just for protection, but also for offense. If you take the attack action on your turn, you can use a bonus action and try to shove a creature within 5 feet of you with your shield. If you are not incapacitated, you can add your shield's armor class bonus to any dexterity saving throw you make against a spell or other harmful effects that target you. If you are subjected to an effect that allows you to make a dexterity saving throw to take only half damage, you can use your reaction to take no damage if you succeed in the saving throw, interposing your shield between yourself and the source of the effect. So this is, once again, one of those iconic images of like the breath weapon blasting over the Paladin as he takes a knee and tucks in behind his shield as it wafts around him.
Yeah, Tony Stark blasting Captain America and watching it wash over that shield. That's such an iconic image.
You had to go back to him, didn't you?
Back to my boy Captain America. You know, the Paladin.
He is. You can't argue it. Still like Tony Stark, but all right. So right around here, we're going to wrap things up for this particular episode. We have a part 2 coming up. Listen in, and we'll get back to you.
That's going to conclude this episode. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Please subscribe to the podcast for more great content. If you'd like to hear a particular topic, you can reach us on Facebook at the Dungeon Masters Dojo, or you can drop us an email at thedungeonmastersdojo@gmail.com. Thank you, and have a good day.